Hey everybody, welcome to the Perfect Pup podcast. I screwed it up last time. So
you got it right this time.
Got it right this time, yep. Today we're going to be talking about picky eaters, how to avoid them, and if your pup is already a picky eater, how to fix that with them.
And for today's pup dates, this is kind of a fun one. I was just kind of perusing the internet, finding cool dog things, and there was a list of all the world records held by dogs.
Nice.
And there are some pretty bizarre ones, like not like the ones that you would think, but like ones like the fastest 100-meter dash with a can balanced on their head, and one of them was the most bottles recycled by a dog.
Oh, nice.
There was another one that was, what was the other one I wrote down?
Eco-friendly pup.
Longest wave surfed by a dog in open water.
Oh,
like some
sweet.
Pretty crazy things. Like some of them are kind of like more weird.
Yeah. Was that dog on the board by itself or with someone?
By itself.
Really?
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
But I'll link to that in the episode notes, and you can go check out some of those cool dog world records.
Nice. I like it.
Yep. All right, let's do this. Picky eaters. So many people have this problem, and I think a big reason why that is because we kind of give into our dogs a little bit too easy, right? Like We're like, oh, they're not eating like they should, or X, Y, and Z different reason, and we kind of cave into their pickiness.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about how to avoid that, and if you have the problem, how to fix it.
Yeah.
So
Your pup knows how to manipulate you. That's
they do.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they will eat all day, and if they have the chance to sit and beg for any little scrap, they'll do it, and they'll make you feel bad about it. So.
Yep. All right, so let's go through some of the ways to how to avoid a picky eater. So number one, and I think this is probably the most important, and this is important even like outside of picky eaters, is sticking to a feeding schedule. We get this question a lot in our private community, which if you're not in there, go join it. If you go into Facebook and search Pupford and 30-day Perfect Pup, you'll find it. But we get this question a lot. Should I be sticking to a feeding schedule? Do I need to can I free feed my dog? Why does it matter? Simply put, you don't want to free feed because it can create a lot of bad habits, especially above all, it's going to probably make your dog be overweight because I don't know about your dog. I mean, my dogs, if I let them free feed, I mean, they would like Buddy, who's almost 14, he would eat it. He would eat the whole bag. He wouldn't stop until he was sick. Some dogs just don't have that level of self-control, and I think we expect them to, but that unfortunately I don't think that's how it works. Really.
No, they don't. Well, and the other side of free feeding is just letting them, putting the bowl down and letting them wander around and just eat it whenever. Right? And that's that can potentially cause problems as well. Could be, even as something as small as if your pup goes to the bathroom right after they eat and they don't, maybe you're not home at the time, or, every dog's different, but free feeding is definitely a problem. It seems like you're doing your pup a favor by letting them eat whenever they want.
Right.
When in reality, you're doing them a disservice.
And on top of that, it's hard to know, if they're getting the right amount or that type of thing. A lot of times it leads to not getting the right amounts. And like we're talking about, it can lead to them being a little bit picky because they know my food's going to be there all day long. I'll just come back to it whenever. Whereas if you stick to a specific schedule and you say, all right, we're feeding at 9 a.m., they've got a half hour to eat it. If they don't finish it, I'm going to pick it back up, and then they can give it another go at dinner time or lunchtime if you're doing 3 meals for a puppy. So having that schedule is going to be one important step.
I do one more point on that too. I do think that part of that stems from people thinking that, or they're being a little bit impatient, basically. They're saying, all right, well, I don't want to sit and wait for my dog to eat. Right. So I'm just going to leave it out, and I got to run, and so I'll leave it there. When in reality, it's only going to take, it'll only take a week or two, probably, of sticking to the schedule before your dog knows, okay, I need to eat when the food is put down. So you're going to be able to establish that schedule and have them eating when they're supposed to be pretty quickly. So if it's a timing issue or you're too impatient to sit and wait for them to eat, it's only going to be that way for a couple of weeks, and it'll be worth it in the long run.
Yeah, you got to stick through it. Okay, another reason that we get picky eaters, and one way to avoid it, is just to avoid table scraps. This is probably one of the hardest things to do because, like you were saying, you're eating whatever, and your dog comes up to you, and they look so cute, and you're like, oh, I'll just give him like a little green bean, or I'll give him a little piece of my chicken, and then it's like you just start the floodgates open, basically. And they start to, I mean, again, because dogs are creatures of habit, and whatever they're getting positively reinforced, they're going to just keep doing that behavior. And so if they come up and beg to you, you give them some food, you just positively reinforce begging. And so you're creating the situation where they're going to beg, but not only the begging and whatnot being a problem, you're also creating, in their mind, they might say, well, I don't know if I want this food that's in my bowl, because I know that my human's going to eat pretty soon here, and I'll just go beg from them and get some of their stuff that might taste better or whatever. So, well,
the problem that potentially comes from that as well is you're feeding them those scraps, and if they do still eat their food, you're going to have a dog that's overeating.
Yes.
Because almost nobody compensates for that.
No.
They look at the back of the bag and say, okay, 2.5 cups per day. I mean, we've got bigger dogs, so that's, for you folks with smaller dogs, 2.5 cups per day doesn't make sense to you. But you know, they'll say 2.5 cups per day, and that's what they're going to scoop every single time for their dog.
Right.
No matter if they're giving them 100 treats plus a bunch of table scraps plus a chew plus whatever else, and before you know it, the caloric intake of your pup is like 30% higher than what it should be every single day. So that's one thing to consider. If you do decide to feed your pup human food, there are okay ways to do it.
Right.
But one caveat with that is compensate for that with their overall caloric intake. So when you're scooping out their dog food, make sure that you're reducing it by the right amount to cover for those additional treats and additional maybe table scraps or whatever else that you're giving to your pup.
Yeah.
Rule of thumb, by the way, 10% of your pup's diet, or the amount of treats that you give your dog should not exceed 10% of your pup's overall diet. That's just a side note as we're talking about it. But what are some okay ways to give your dog human food?
Well, and on just one other point on that, I think it is important to note that, like, sometimes, in some instances, our dogs become picky because they just like you said, you're giving them too much food in general, and so maybe they're just not actually hungry. Like that's a sign. Like, we noticed this with our dogs, that like we like kind of reevaluated, like, oh, we're actually feeding too much, and then when we cut it back to what they actually should have been getting, they were less picky with their eating. So some okay ways that you can do table scraps if you really want to do it. There's like a couple things that I'd recommend. Number one, if like wherever you're eating, step away from that area. Like, don't actually give the table scraps or the human food where you're eating, because again, it just breeds that, like, they're wanting to beg.
Dogs work off of association.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's why a dog might get scared once by a man
Smoke
wearing
alarm.
a black hat or a smoke alarm when they're small, and they'll be afraid of it for the rest of their life.
Yep.
Things as small as that cause association in pups' minds. So you can imagine that something as powerful as food, and most dogs are food driven, being fed at a table is going to create a massive association.
They're just going to keep coming back. So step away from the area that you're eating, and make it like a training opportunity. Have them do a couple tricks, or use it to like teach a behavior you've been trying to kind of overcome. Or if you want to take it even a step further, like, put it in their actual food bowl, even if it's not their regular mealtime. I know some of the stuff we're saying is contradicting, because we're saying, like, stick to a schedule, don't feed table scraps, but we recognize that sometimes you're just going to do it. So take precautions to, like,
if you're going to do it this way, not do it the other way.
Do it as, like, avoid negative things as much as possible.
For sure.
One other point similar to that would just be about counter surfing. So it kind of goes hand in hand where if your dog gets used to counter surfing and starts counter surfing and getting food, like, again, that's going to make them more picky with their actual mealtime. So in the beginning stages of your dog's life, especially if you're still kind of like training and teaching them, so like the first year, basically, like, you just have to be meticulous about, like, not leaving any food on the counter. And that is way easier said than done. We both have dogs who have done their fair share of counter surfing because they're tall. But, like, as much as you can, like, just try to avoid counter surfing, because it'll breed pickiness and other bad behaviors that will go along with it.
And one thing that goes along with that, your dog is naturally going to be drawn to wanting to be in the kitchen while you're eating.
Right.
Part of establishing a feeding schedule and establishing a schedule for your pup is that might be chew time for them. So while you're eating, maybe you make that their time that they go to their bed or they go to their crate or they go to wherever a comfortable spot for them is.
Yeah.
And that's when they get their split elk antler or their yak chews or their beef tendons or whatever other chew you might be giving to them. And that kind of gives them they won't feel as much FOMO that way. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's kind of one of the things we're going to talk about is, if you're struggling with, this goes, it's kind of related to picky eating, but, if you recognize that they're trying to come after, like, when you're sitting down for mealtime or when you're cooking, like Mike said, give them some other activity, and part of that, it can be a great opportunity to teach the place behavior, being able to tell them specifically go to your place, and that'll help with a lot of other things. So
one thought too that I had there, especially for you folks with kids, if you got kids, I would definitely establish that, and we try and do that. We're not as good about it as we should be. Sometimes Doris sits there in the kitchen and just like watches the girls eat and waits for
anything to
tiny child to let anything fall. So what we'll try to do is say, nope, go to your bed. We'll send her over to her bed and let her spend some time over there instead. But for you folks with kids, that'll make a big difference because your kids will drop food or they will give your pup food. They just don't understand the same way. And so establishing that place command will make a big difference.
For sure. Okay, one other note on like how to avoid the pickiness. We kind of talked about this, but you have to be a little bit like strict. If you've got a couple days where it's like, oh, my dog's starting to get a little picky, and you're getting frustrated, you might be like, well, I'll just add some chicken to their bowl.
Or I'm going to change their food right now.
Or I'm going to change their food, or throw in some yogurt, or add some peanut butter and mix it around. Like, really, I know the mindset because I've been there before, and the mindset is, well, I just need my dog to eat. Like, I need to make sure they're getting their food. But really, you're just breeding more pickiness because you're basically telling them, hey, if you hold out, again, associations. Hey, if you hold out and don't eat for a little bit, or don't eat a meal, like, oh, the human will add some tastier stuff next time. So you're just breeding more and more pickiness. So you can't give into it. You have to just, like, again, pick a window and say, okay, 30 minutes. If they don't eat it, I'll pick the bowl up, and they'll get that at their next mealtime. Your dog is not going to starve themselves. I say that with a little bit of like an asterisk of like...
There are very few instances, but like...
It's rare.
It is so rare.
And if there's probably something larger like that you need to just talk to your vet and figure out, like, maybe they are having some pain while eating, so they have like teeth problems, or maybe like they're sick. Like,
but even then, at the end of the day, when your dog gets hungry, they're going to eat. 100%. They're going to eat. And so you've just got to be patient. You've got to stick to it. You got to have a little bit more stamina and grit than your pup, basically.
For sure. So those are kind of some of the ways to avoid it. Also ways to fix it in a sense, right? Like, we've given you a lot of ideas to fix it. One more important one, like, I think sometimes we think it's pickiness, but it's actually just like kind of boredom, right? Like, some dogs I think just get bored with meal times. Like, if they're not super food driven and they are a little bit picky, sometimes if you just setting their food down and being like, okay, go ahead, they're like, this like isn't exciting. So use things like puzzle feeders, use things like there's so many different puzzle feeders, snuffle mats. You can put some of it in a Kong. You can play hide and seek with their food. Like, if you use a kibble, like, my dogs love doing that from time to time. Like, I'll just, keep them in one room and go hide half their meal throughout the house, and they love it. Plus, it's mental exercise. It gets them going because I think, like, I don't know, the whole dogs, wolves, like, there's some debate. Like, obviously we know that they are like very related and like descended some way back, but like they did used to have to forage for their food and work for it, and like it wasn't just presented to them. And so there is that kind of instinct of like, I think, many breeds, they like to be able to like kind of find their food and have to work for it and not just be like, oh, it's right here in front of me. So making it not boring, I guess, and just like making it an opportunity to train too.
Yeah, and most of the folks that we talk to on a day-to-day basis have younger dogs. And younger dogs are more prone to getting into trouble. But a dog that is solving problems like that is a dog that's not causing trouble typically. 100%. So it's going to wear them out mentally, but it also helps them understand this is a proper way of doing something that's interesting to my mind. And maybe chewing on a shoe is an improper way of doing something that's interesting to my mind. 100%. So yeah, it's a great way to get rid of that boredom, but also a good way to keep them out of trouble too.
And if you have behaviors that you're struggling with, no matter what type of food you are feeding your dog, you can find ways to incorporate it into training. Because oftentimes that is a good opportunity. A good time to train your dog is when they are like hungry or it's around their mealtime. You can use, maybe just portion out like a quarter of their meal and do some training routines and like work on some tricks or whatever to just kind of keep them interested. So those are a lot of ideas. Hopefully, if you're struggling with a picky eater, we feel you. I've been there. I think you've been there probably with Doris a little bit.
Yeah,
it's tough. Like it's very hard because, again, I think at the root, you just want to make sure that your dog is happy and healthy and, getting the food that they need. If you feel like there's something more than just like picky eating going on, obviously talk to your vet.
Yeah.
There's sometimes underlying factors. And that's also why you shouldn't free feed is recognizing your dog's like habits and how they're acting around food can sometimes be an indicator of like a change in like, if they get sick, they might not be interested in their food anymore. And it's like, that's a sign to say, oh, something is changed, something's going on, I may need to go to the vet because they're not interested in food right now, or it looks like they're having pain when they eat. Like there's so many reasons not to free feed, but that's just another one that I'm going to throw in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so picky eating can be avoided. It can be fixed if your pup is already a picky eater. Don't automatically jump to, I need to switch my food, or I need to get fancy with it.
Yep.
If you're patient, if you work on it, if you, just take the time to find a solution and fix the problem, then it'll get better.
Definitely. And if you, again, I kind of talked about it earlier, but if you have not joined the private community that we have on Facebook, go check that out. Download the free Pupford app.
That's the first thing.
Download
that app first.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're not there.
Join the class. Join the group on Facebook. There's a lot of great resources there. There's probably 10 to 20 different threads in that group talking about picky eating. So if you want even more resources, you can go see what other people have done as well. But please subscribe to the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe there, leave us a comment, ask us a question, share this with your friends. We would really, really appreciate it. But thanks again so much for listening.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
See ya.
Have a good one.